there's no reason they couldn't have done it today. Like there wasn't anything that actually happened with their cars, or there wasn't anything they could blame on anyone else really, except from just their lack of defensive driving.
Yeah.
Um,
There was always going to be this moment where the team has a choice to make about, do we do something for the good of the team, or do we do something for the good of our number one driver? And as much as they want to say that they don't have a number one driver, at the end of the day, you have a 7-time world championship champion and a rookie in the car, right? And you can't get away from the gravity of that fact, no matter what you do. So
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to On the Chicane with myself, Miriam, and my co-host, Paris. You are getting this live from the UK at 10 to 11 p.m. after the Miami race. It's been a long day. The race has, finished about half an hour ago. And yeah, it was the first race in Miami. Clearly the place to be this weekend, because I think everyone and their mum and their dog was in the Miami paddock this weekend.
literally.
So I think Paris and I have massively missed out this year, but maybe next year. Yeah, I mean, I think it was a race that delivered in kind of every way. Every team was like putting out content. Every team kind of had Miami focused campaigns. I mean, I've literally just been working this entire week, including this weekend, because we've been putting out a lot of Miami content. So I think the Miami hype is real, was real. And I don't know if it'll continue for next year, but I think just because it's the first race, it's just been a big hoo-ha. And I feel like the race itself had the potential to be actually quite underwhelming. And there were stages where I was a bit like, this is a bit of a shite race, but I think it picked itself up and we got to see some action. So first thoughts, what do you think of Miami? What did you think of just the whole thing?
I think it's exactly what you're saying. The social media content was on point this weekend. I was judging the friggin' helmets like it was the Met Gala. I'm like, okay, Lando Norris, I see what you're doing with your basketball. Daniel Ricciardo and your Ace Ventura, I see what you're doing over there. Like literally looking at all of the helmets. I must say, for me, Lando Norris's helmet was my favorite, but I appreciate Valtteri's dedication of having 3 race helmets for this entire weekend. Everybody had the Miami colors. You literally had you could tell there were celebs flying in from absolutely everywhere for this race, and the hype was next level. Honestly, I don't think we've ever seen any kind of presence and marketing on this level for a race yet so far in this era of like social media and F1. So I think just like everything surrounding the race was hyping it up to be an amazing weekend, and all of the content that came from it was really fun to see. I was a bit unsure about like what to expect from the actual racetrack. So if you guys can follow AMG Dens on Twitter, so he did a hot lap for us and he kind of tagged us in it, which was so sweet. Shout out Dens.
Link it in
And
the description below.
yeah, we'll tag you in the description below. And that kind of gave us a real insight in what the track was going to be like. And I saw like a lot of straights. I noticed the chicane, like it was going to be a bit of a tight one. And like looking at maybe the perspective for actually having spaces to overtake or not overtake. So I was kind of interested in seeing what kind of a race it was going to be. And I agree with you. I don't think it necessarily delivered on track as much as it did for like the hype of the whole weekend until the very end of the race. I think that they could tweak the track a little bit more, and then we might be in for like a much actual better race with a bit more action and stuff. I was praying for rain the whole time. I was like, come on, just like give us something, please.
Would have thrown such a spanner in the works.
Definitely.
Um, Yeah, I think it's been such a hyped up weekend, to the point where I can imagine most people who attended. Shout out Sarah from Grid Click, who I've just been following her stories and vicariously living through her this entire weekend. Everyone
Same.
next is probably going to be on such a downer from being on such a high the entire week because of Miami.
Literally.
So good
The
luck on that.
content from creators as well has been amazing. Like the Apex Takeover cast, Tonya and Martha were there. Natural Paradigm off of Twitter, one of the aerodynamicists, he was there. So many of our like well-known I want to say friends, our friends and collaborators in the Formula One sphere. Honestly, I feel like just tagging them all below, like go check them out because the content that they produced this weekend was really good. And yeah, I think the drinks and the upper and they will be on definitely a downer after all of that.
Yeah. Um, so yeah, I suppose let's actually get into the racing action itself, because I
Mhm.
mean that's why we're all here, right? Because the cars go around in circles. Um, so yeah, I think obviously track temperatures were very high this weekend. We
Mhm.
were racing in Florida, the Sunshine State. Um, it's an anti-clockwise circuit as well, street circuit, one horrendously long straight,
Mhm.
which should have provided more overtaking opportunities, and I think it did. But there's a lot of potential for the track to be developed, I think.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, we did see some action throughout the weekend. Uh, I suppose we can start with quali. Paris, what were your
Yeah.
talking points in quali?
I think for quali, it wasn't the most craziest quali out there. I think the main things were like Russell not making it into Q3, which we kind of did expect him to, so it was a bit of a shame. Stroll making it into Q3, which is great for the Aston Martins, and then Leclerc kind of taking it away. So I would say that it was kind of nice setup for the weekend. Like there was a couple of things that could people out of place or people in a place that you wouldn't expect, that could have potentially caused a bit of disruption for the race. I mean, I'm sure everybody at Aston was really happy for Stroll.
Yeah, it's been I mean, considering our predictions for the race, it's been nice to see that there's been a bit of pace in the cars this weekend. So yeah.
Yeah, it was just a shame. So like obviously today when they actually ended up starting from the pits, because of the fuel pump issue, I think that was like damn, like us they've had such a good weekend, damn. um I don't
It
think they want any more fuel issues after last year, with Seb and everything that
yeah.
happened in that race, and him being disqualified. So yeah, I think any more issues, they need to put those to bed quite quickly now.
It just seems to be Aston Martin's luck, right? Like they
Yeah.
have like a good like little peak of something, and then all of a sudden it just comes crashing down. So I feel
Yeah.
like there's no point in even trying to get our hopes up that we're going to see more from Aston, because I just think it's so unpredictable. So let's just wait and see how it goes. Um, but yeah, so on to the race today. We had Leclerc and Sainz starting 1-2 for Ferrari. I was so happy to see that. And then we had the Red Bulls third and fourth after. And correct me if I'm wrong, both of the Mercedes starting in the top 10?
No, sorry. We had Bottas and Hamilton, and I think George started 12th or 13th.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah, because we're that in Q2.
Yeah,
Yes, sorry, my mistake. So, yeah, I mean, there was a bit of something from Mercedes. And I think I did see quite a few people getting hyped up on Twitter thinking, oh, yeah, we're back. But also, a lot of people are like, let's be real here, guys. Like, let's not get ahead of ourselves.
yeah.
Um, so, yeah, it seemed
I think it
that
was
there,
because they had such like seemingly good pace in practice. So, and then Hamilton getting sick, it was looking like had the potential for being a good weekend. But there was things gained. We'll talk about that later in the race. But I think perhaps still not obviously where they want to be. They want to be at the front, don't they?
I mean, for me, the most exciting thing was the fact that Ferrari were starting on the front row.
Yeah.
But as soon as lights out went, Leclerc got off to a really good start. His starts tend to be really good, actually. I think he's the better starter of
between him and
Max.
Mm-hmm.
But then, yeah, I mean, Carlos unfortunately lost out to Max pretty soon in the first lap. So that was a shame and something that he wasn't able to recover. And then, yeah, from then on, it was a bit of a Ferrari, Red Bull situ going on, and just trying to figure out who would come out on top.
I think it was quite interesting to me that Leclerc kind of went into the weekend ahead by a lot of points. He had a lot of points before Imola as well. Sorry, after Imola, like after the sprint, he was like 40 points ahead. And I'm just disappointed, not gonna lie. I feel like Ferrari and Red Bull both have very competitive cars, and somehow Red Bull are maximizing that, just like skipping to later in the race. But like Perez and Sainz, Sainz was doing really well, and then Perez was like closing up on him, and even though Perez had some issues with his car, he was still closing in after one of the safety cars. So I feel like the Red Bulls at the moment somehow are seeming a little bit like the slightly better package.
Yeah.
Which is really weird because I feel like, Ferrari started the season so strong. Like we were almost ready to write Red Bull off, know? But Red Bull are pulling that back very fast. And I think Ferrari need to get on top of it. Otherwise, there is going to be a switch in the championship very quickly.
I agree. I'm quite nervous that Leclerc, and if he's going to manage to be able to retain this lead in the championship. So yeah, it's a very good point. But I suppose whilst we're on the topic of Red Bull and Ferrari, yeah, in the race, Verstappen ended up taking the lead from Leclerc again pretty soon into the race.
Yeah, it was literally lap 9, so that was within 10 laps, just overtaking him.
And he managed to retain that lead and obviously take home the win today, with Leclerc finishing second. So it's just, I was watching the race with my brother and he made a comment and he was like, Leclerc's not very good at like coming back to Max, is he? And like taking that lead back. And I was like, it's actually a good point. I feel like anytime Max comes and kind of overtakes Leclerc, Charles like suffers and doesn't manage to get back in there. So I think that's something that he really needs to work on, which is fighting for the title this year. You can't be giving up your place and not defending and then not coming charging back. So
yeah,
even later on in the race when Charles was getting close enough, there was one clip that they showed and he went over like the curb and it was just like a bit of a silly mistake. I mean, it didn't cost him anything, but it could have cost him something. So it's like, I think Leclerc needs to get his championship head on and think like he's in this for real. He's here to technically, fight Max, potentially take the title win, but he's just not on par with Max.
I wonder if there was anything else like contributing to it. Like, the commentators mentioned that Red Bull had a superior, like faster car on the straights and stuff like that. But like you said, maybe, okay, they had the faster car on the straights, but maybe he could have defended better. And I just wonder why he wasn't able to do that. I think like the first few races of the season, so I'm thinking like Bahrain and Saudi Arabia, like you saw the DRS chicken, and you kind of saw him playing his chess moves on Verstappen and being like, cool, I've got your number and I know how you run and how you work. And it seemed like we were going to get a much more cunning Leclerc this season, but I didn't see that in this race. So I'm hoping that it was just this race, and that fight that we're talking about, that he does have that and he does come back. What I am enjoying is the commentary around Verstappen and Leclerc. I think it's so much different from the commentary that we had last year with Lewis and Verstappen. So I feel like we can enjoy it and we can discuss them as two drivers and say, like, who's driving better in this race and who's not. And we don't have to deal with all of the politics around it, because there is so much politics when it comes to the way people discuss Lewis, which we will probably get onto when we talk about George and Lewis. But just bringing it back to Max and Charles, like, I think today Max outclassed Charles, and I don't want to see that happen again. So Charles, get your shit together, okay?
Yeah, unfortunately, I would agree with you. They had the potential. I mean, if they were able to take 1-2 in quali, there's no reason they couldn't have done it today. Like, there wasn't anything that actually happened with their cars, or there wasn't anything they could blame on anyone else, really, except from just their lack of defensive driving. So I think, they just kind of need to get their heads in the game a bit more and just give it back to Red Bull with a bit more determination. So I suppose that was the two title contenders. I suppose
elsewhere on the grid, like, you had Alonso, who was doing a lot of stuff. I was also watching with somebody today, and they don't watch Formula One at all. And he just basically was like, oh, Alonso, he's a bit like, he's a bit Larry, isn't he, kind of thing. Like, he's just in there, thrown up the inside and stuff. And I think today, Alonso was kind of his wily coyote self, where he's in there and in and out and stuff. And he gained 4 places on that first lap, and he was doing a lot this race, I think. So it was interesting to see again. I mean, in the end, he finished 11th. I think he had a 5-second penalty in the end.
So that was kind of like the beginning of the race, and then throughout the race, not much really happened. And I was kind of sat there thinking, this is a bit dry. But I think it was within the last 15 laps or so, which is where it kind of picked up again. And this is usually what happens in most F1 races. It kind of, there's a bit of a lull in the middle usually. And Miami was no different, because it did pick up. And the first incident that saw a safety car being deployed was between the younger drivers, Lando Norris for McLaren and Pierre Gasly for AlphaTauri. It was a bit of an incident where Gasly who kind of went?
I think Gasly went wide from a previous, like a slight previous incident, and then as he was kind of rejoining the track, and he kind of like rejoined, drove up a little bit and was coming up to a corner, which is like a slight blind corner. So he was turning in slightly and whacked the back of Lando Norris's wheel, and it just went like poof, and sent him spinning. So it was like, it was a pretty bad bit of contact, actually, because with a street race, the walls are much more narrow, so if he spins out, he could end up into a wall much easier. There's not gravel, it's not things to run off into, so not much runoff area. And I think one of the things with street tracks that we always talk about is safety, and I think that was maybe one of the areas that they need to like look at again when it comes to the track design, because then you had this big crane tractor like practically on the track trying to take this car F1 car off, and we've seen the dangers that can happen with that when that happens. But yeah, so Pierre caused that collision with Lando Norris, and then that brought out at first a virtual safety car for I think one lap, and then straight after following that there was a full safety car allowing people to pit. So the craziness that happened, so I have it written down here, like you had Perez, Russell, Ocon, Ricardo, who all benefited from this safety car. Perez was able, as we said, like he had a bit of issues with his car, so he was able to put some better tires on. I think he went on to the mediums, and he was able to catch back up to Sainz very easily. Then Russell, who had yet to pit, was able to kind of pit and save himself some time. I literally was calling him the safety car savant on Twitter, because like this guy just benefits this season from safety cars. I don't know how he does it. It's like he knows when they're going to happen, and he just puts himself into the right position. It's like some crazy game where he can see the future, and he's like bloody psychic when it comes to safety. Because he literally said on the radio, and he's like, "Oh, why don't we just wait for a safety car?" It's like he knew it was going to happen.
I mean, I'd have been surprised if there wasn't a safety car, considering it's the first time they were racing there, and it's a street track. True. So yeah, I'm not surprised that there was a safety car, to be honest.
But I'm surprised that he benefited from it so much.
Yeah, I mean, kudos to him, right?
Yeah.
What else happened under the safety car? There was quite a few things that happened in those last 20 laps. After the safety car, we've got some pretty good racing, and the Astons are doing quite well. I think Seb was up quite high, all things considered.
Yeah.
And
Mick as well. Like he was also up quite high and actually in the points.
Yeah. Yeah, so they were both in the points racing, obviously racing hard to try and maintain their position / get an advantage. And it's difficult because we know that Seb and Mick have such a great friendship off the track, but there's been a few incidents with them on track. And today, unfortunately, there was another incident which forced Vettel to retire and required Schumacher to get a new front nose. They both just kind of collided, and Seb kind of just went off, and it was just typical, because on a day that he's doing all right, he unfortunately ended up retiring. So yeah, I mean, it is what it is. It's just racing, right? But just not what you want, and obviously not what you want from the kid that you're mentoring as well.
I think it's a really like unfortunate event for Vettel. Like he's had a really crappy start to the new year. Even in the race, like he locked up a few times, and I felt like he wasn't necessarily performing his best. So the fact that he was running, I think, just outside of the points, and I think Mick was like 10th or something when they crashed. But oh my gosh, like just another bad day for Aston, right? Like, and for the fact that it was Mick. But it kind of brings me around to like the fact that there are relationships on the track. You've got Vettel and Mick, and how you're supposed to navigate those relationships. Because I think one of the interesting things that came up today was the first real incidents we had of George and Lewis coming together, right? Like at the point, sorry, when I say coming together, I don't mean like colliding. I mean coming across each other in the race, in racing conditions. And I think one thing I'm going to dispel straight away is like, I completely personally hate the narrative like George is outperforming Lewis and blah, blah, blah. Like, as we've discussed in the last episode, there are reasons already why Lewis has not performed as well as George. Like, he literally had sensors on his car, he's lost out safety cars, there's been so many different reasons. And also the narrative of the team that they are trying to run with, like they're trying to go with, is that, you know, Lewis is the mentor for George. And I definitely see that in the way that they act and the way that they respect each other. So bringing it back around to today's race, I think that there was always going to be this moment where the team has a choice to make about, do we do something for the good of the team, or do we do something for the good of our number one driver? And as much as they want to say that they don't have a number one driver, at the end of the day, you have a 7-time world championship champion and a rookie in the car, right? And, you know, you can't get away from the gravity of that fact, no matter what you do. So I think today it looked like Lewis was put in a difficult position, and like the odds weren't in his favor. But my personal opinion of that situation is that the team did more or less the right thing. You know, they were always going to get fifth and sixth. And I think had they let them battle it out, had they pitted Lewis onto a different set of tires, you know, all that would have happened was you would end up with George in the same position that he was, which was fifth, and Lewis in like eighth or ninth. So personally, I think that the team did the right thing, and that they're in an incredibly difficult position when it comes to George and Lewis battling. And I think at the end of the day, at some point, they're going to have to choose who they want their number one driver to be, who they're going to put their eggs in that basket, and, you know, they have to make that decision.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Kudos to them. It was clean racing between the two of them. And we have seen in the past where Lewis can get very defensive with his teammate. And it can sometimes end up costing them both. Sometimes Hamilton comes out on top. Sometimes he loses out. But today was quite clean. And I think the part where George kind of then retook his position from Lewis was very clean. That's all I can say. And it was just nice. I feel like there's the mentality of the team for both of them. They're not just there to be like, okay, this is mine. They're racing because they want to race for team positions.
Yeah.
So they could have gone harder for that. Lewis probably could have defended much more than that. But why risk his position? Why risk that for the team when it's points that they need, right?
Yeah.
So I think that they both drove well. They both did a good job. And it was nice to see them finishing fifth and sixth. Like there's it's just a bit of a respect thing, I think. So yeah,
what do you think of Lewis's Lewis's commentary is like, oh, I'm massively, what do you say, I'm massively missed out there or something like that. And then I think it was Bono who was like, because of the safety car, mate, like I think it was kind of like, we'll talk after the race kind of thing. But I don't know if Lewis was made aware that George hadn't pitted yet, and he was then on much fresher tires. Like what else could they have done? Difficult question.
Yeah. I don't know. I think Lewis always has something to say, right? But it's not because he's being difficult, he's just trying to understand. And even that point where they like, I think Bono asked him, like, do you want to pit? And he was like, don't put this on me, man. Like, I don't know. Like, you can see the data, so you tell me.
Basically,
like, I don't want to lose the position that I'm in right now. So based on that, what do you think I should do? And then Bono was like, okay, we recommend you stay out. So that is the kind of call. Like, I understand that drivers do sometimes think, okay, I need to pit now, so pit me. But then sometimes it needs to be a mutual thing. So yeah, I understand why Bono asked him, but I also understand why Lewis deflected that back to Bono.
Yeah. I think Lewis was right. If you're the team strategist, you need to be telling me where it's better to stay out. Like, is it better for me to stay out, or is it better for me not? And then if I don't stay out, then you can say, well, mate, like, you made a messed up decision, you didn't stay out. But like, you need to give me that thing. Especially, I don't know if Bono's his strategist, it's his race engineer, so he has to do what's best for Lewis. He has to advise Lewis, and then inevitably, like we said, like the decision that they were making has to overall benefit the team, and they don't want to like crash into George or something if they're defending and racing. And like you said, they were very clean and they didn't. But all of, as the race strategist, you have to take that into account and say, look, Lewis, you could fight George for this position. We could pit you now, but we're not going to because of this reason, that reason, that reason. And it's better for your race if you stay here. And I think that's what Mercedes are almost afraid to do, because like we said, like they don't want to like put one driver over the other or anything like that, but they have to you have to be much more calculated with these strategy calls, and you'll probably end up putting your car even further forward than it could be, by taking those little risks and doing things in a much more calculated way.
I don't know, we've said a lot in the past, not just this year but last year as well, like Mercedes kind of need to fix up on their pit stops, they need to rethink their strategy sometimes. And I do think that because of the position that Mercedes are in, there is no winning with them. They will always find something to talk about. Even if they made like a completely different decision, we would have had something to pick about on that. So it's difficult, I think, to say what the right or the wrong thing is, especially when it comes to Mercedes, because of their position in the championship as a whole, there's always going to be something to say.
And
I'm not necessarily saying that
we're
right.
I appreciate that. I think that's a really good point, to be honest, actually.
So I just think like we have our opinions and say what we think, but there'll be a million other people out there who will think the complete opposite, or something very similar, or something that we wouldn't have even thought of. So yeah, it's difficult to comment on Mercedes and their strategies and whatever.
But yeah,
on the topic, Mercedes, there was an incident in the race. I mean, after the whole safety car thing and whatever, where Bottas was racing ahead of the Mercedes. And it was a bit weird because, Bottas and his Mercedes history. Somehow he ended up going wide in one of the corners and allowing both of the Mercedes to go through. And that was, I think, where they had the whole overtaking thing. But that was just quite interesting to see because, I mean, first of all, Bottas, you were driving so well, and then all of a sudden, just out of nowhere, you just go wide. But again, like just that, it's almost kind of a bit like, people say this all the time, but it's a bit of a dance, isn't it? Where you're trying to find the balance between like fighting for your position and also allowing your teammates space and trying to do what's better for the team, but also thinking about yourself. So even that, when they kind of overtook Bottas, it was a bit like, okay, well, how's this going to play out? Because it could have got very dirty, but it didn't. So yeah, I think I'm just happy to see that Mercedes, the drivers are both, it seems like they're both doing what's right for the team as opposed to just individually thinking about themselves. So yeah, I don't know, it was just quite nice to see, really.
Cool. Well, we look forward to seeing more of it in the next couple of races. So rounding out today, I think there's been a lot of good things, some a bit dull moments of Miami, but overall for you this weekend, who was your loser of the weekend or loser of the day?
God, that's hard. I don't know, that's really difficult, actually.
There's a lot to choose from this weekend. It's like a smorgasbord of losers.
I feel like there is, but also a bit like, I don't know, this is actually really difficult. I'm going to go for, this is someone we've not mentioned for a while, but I'm going to go for Latifi.
Wow.
Just because, like obviously there's the obvious ones of people who had DNFs and whatever, but I just think Latifi, you just need to fix up. Albon's come back into the team after a year out of F1. He's in the same car as you, and he's up there. Like today, he was racing in the points as well, and Latifi's just kind of finished towards the back of the grid. So it's not an obvious one, and there's no real reason for it, but I do think Latifi just kind of needs to fix up a bit.
I think that's fair. Like, I mean, I think he's going to just be at the back for the whole year. Like, I feel like Joe was out quite early as well, with a mechanical issue. But I think even him in his Alfa Romeo has been doing way better in his first season than Latifi, who's now been in Formula One for like 4 seasons or whatever. I think we're bored of seeing him on the track. He's taking up a space and he needs to go. I personally don't think he'll last like to the like after the end of this year. I think he's going to be gone personally. But yeah, definitely if he keeps up this kind of stuff and doesn't perform, he will be. I think my loser of the day, it's a tough one because there are quite a few people that I could give it to for various different reasons. I'm going to give it to Mick Schumacher with a heavy heart for causing the issue with Vettel. I think, he was in the points for the first time, or near the points. I can't actually remember where he was at the moment. He was doing really well, and he had, his best race so far of his career. And I think he just needed to keep his nose clean for a little bit longer. And those kind of moments are the moments that make a racing driver. And I think he is he's just missing the mark a little bit for me.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I can understand why you said that. So yeah, I think that would have been one of the more obvious ones that I was potentially thinking about going for.
Yeah.
Um, my winner of the day, I'm going to give to my loser of the day's teammate, Albon. I think Alex, again, we just need to think about the fact that this is Alex's first season back after being cast out by Red Bull and all of that. He's back, he's in a Williams. We know that Williams don't have the best car. He qualified 18th yesterday. I think he was out in Q1
Mm.
and managed to finish and take the last point today. So, you compare him to his teammate and he's just doing well. So kudos to Alex. Well done for grabbing the last point in Miami. Keep it up. And yeah, who was your winner?
Um, I'm going to say Ocon.
Okay.
He came eighth. He had a lovely kind of clean race. He was in there. He was racing between a few people at a few different times, and he managed to put his Alpine ahead of Alonso in the end because Alonso got a 5-second grid penalty, and he got a good 4 points. So I'm happy for him. I think there was a lot going on in front of him, so I feel like that's probably my winner of the day. He did well.
Yeah.
Like you said, not an obvious choice, but I'm happy for him.
Okay. I like it. I like that we're not choosing the obvious ones. So that is our Miami kind of recap, I suppose. We have Spain up in 2 weeks' time. We're racing in Barcelona. And I feel like the season is now underway.
Yeah.
Spain will
And
be
also Barcelona is a known entity. Like we have raced at Barcelona for years, they do testing here. So I feel like it is going to be a track where they have a lot more data to work from. So we will be able to see a lot of probably upgrades that are track specific. And we're going to see probably a lot more like performance from the car. So I'm quite looking forward to Barcelona just for those reasons. I know it's not necessarily the best for overtaking. However, I think for the reasons I've just said, like it's still going to be a really good race and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I agree entirely with that. I think there will be some car developments and things. I mean, the teams have got 2 weeks to figure it out. Under 2 weeks. So yeah, I look forward to it. But obviously, as usual, guys, follow us on social. You can find us at On the Chicane on Twitter and Instagram, and obviously here on YouTube. Like, share, subscribe, comment, all the rest of it. Tell your friends to tell their friends, because yeah, we just need the support, guys. So if you're a regular watcher, then thank you so much. And if you've made it up to this point in the video, then thank you very much for watching. And if you're new, then welcome. Hit us up on social media. We're very active on Twitter. And yeah, would love to hear your comments and thoughts, and let us know what you thought of Miami. Do you want to keep racing here, or are you kind of over it already? What do you think?
You literally took all of the words out of my mouth. So we will see you guys again in 2 weeks. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.